Men, do you ever feel like you just can't get ahead? Like you're misunderstood? Like you have no one to talk to that truly hears you?
And women, are you often frustrated, hurt, and saddened in your relationships with the men in your life?
What if there were a community of like-minded men going through the same challenges that would support, hear, and understand what you're going through?
Working together in unison to create understanding, intimacy, and strong connections. That's the Way of the Illuminated Warrior.
Way of the Illuminated Warrior talk show is a forum of candid conversations for men and women about men. Being a man today is not always easy. Until now.
All right, welcome back to another episode of the Way of the Illuminated Warrior. I am Waska, your host, and with me today is a dear friend, Tia Christiansen, a fellow light worker on this crazy journey that we're calling life. Thanks for joining me again, Tia.
My absolute honor and pleasure to be here with you and to be with your community. And I'm always a yes, whatever you ask, I'm always in.
Yes. Well, now I'm remembering, because I said thanks for being with me again. Do you remember what we talked about last time?
Feminine power, if I recall.
Well, isn't that interesting? Guess what we're going to talk about today?
Yeah, no coincidences, are there?
Yeah, a little feminine power. Yes. So we're having this conversation and we're talking, recording this on what's known as Independence Day in the United States, July 4th. So some might argue, actually a lot might argue, that it's lack of Independence Day based on the recent Supreme Court decision to roll back and reverse over a half a century of law, of whatever we want to call it, that has protected women's right and choice to over their bodies. So when you heard the decision come down, like, how did that feel to you? What was going on in your head? And let's talk about that independence or lack thereof.
Yeah, I felt violated. And you might hear my cat Azrael in the background. He's got a lot to say too about this.
Good. All perspectives, all are welcome.
I felt violated. I felt let down. I felt crushed. I felt angry, furious. I went through all the phases, and sorry. Hello, everyone. This is Azrael. He just decided.
Hi, Azrael.
Yeah. Okay. I felt let down. And so, of course, through that process, I went into a place of blaming outside of myself. And I went into all the stuff. Okay, get down. And I went into blame of, for me, I didn't go to those white men on the court. I went to a place of women, ladies, how could we be so divided? How could we have so many women vote for the previous administration? How could we have so many women, even though their belief system may be whatever it is about when life starts, be in a place where they're advocating for women not to be able to have control over their bodies? So I got angry and frustrated, and it took me a while to shift out of that. And I'm not saying that I'm 100% there. I still am rolling around with those ideas and those feelings of feeling let down. And there's a lot that I can say about that, and especially as I read certain articles on things. But I would say that in terms of thinking about today and what today represents for America, and shifting my perspective around that, and it's freedom of choice, freedom of thought, independence. So what does that mean to me? And I invite all of us to think about what that means to us. And freedom does mean having the freedom to think and activate your right to vote and advocate for what you believe in. And so therein comes a conundrum for me. And yes, freedom to think and act and advocate for what we believe in. However, I believe there are certain inalienable rights that we have as people that supersede one person's ability to tell another person what they can do with their body.
Yeah. Yeah. That you would think that would be like one of the top inalienable, I can't say that word. You know what? You guys know what I mean. Inalienable rights. Really. Because I would like to think that's a birthright, but it really obviously isn't, you know, and thinking about the decisions that are made. And I don't really point fingers at, you know, who is leading the country, who's, you know, we're all entitled to our own opinions. We're all entitled to, obviously, freedom of speech, freedom of expression. I've talked to a number of women friends, and I just want to understand, you know, and I'm not taking sides here, maybe I am. How do you vote for any person, whatever their political aspirations, views, leadership is, when they're blatantly, and there's really, I don't think there's any really dispute that the previous administration was misogynistic and abusive, physically, verbally, in pretty much every way, keeping women down. So I just really, I still don't understand why any woman would support that. You know, forget the politics of it. And that has been some of their answers. Well, he's good for the country, but is he good for you physically? Would you want your daughter to be in his space or around a man like this? So I'm really befuddled by that whole mindset. So I don't know if you have any clarity for me possibly on that, because I just really don't understand it, just from the perspective of how you're being treated by a man, regardless of what his position is. Why would that be acceptable?
I'm as befuddled as you are, truly, honestly. I can't, and we take a look at two of our Supreme Court justices, Thomas and Kavanaugh, who have had allegations and lots of testimony. And it seems very clear to me that both of them had their hands on women uninvited. And yet here they are sitting on the Supreme Court. How is it even possible? I mean, anyway, that we can digress on that, but like it's shocking to me. I remember when Gary Hart ran for president when we were in high school, and there was a picture that came out of him with a woman sitting on his lap. It killed his entire political career. There was a time in this country when even the slightest hint of impropriety would take somebody out of the game. And that is not the case anymore. And I say that is a very interesting part of where we are in society. I believe there's a generational aspect there in terms of taking a look at Trump and a master of media manipulation. And if you've ever seen the movie Wag the Dog, which is a politically based, commentary on the political system with Dustin Hoffman and a few other amazing actors. And that's what it reminded me of. Oh, look over here. Look at this shiny toy. Mm-hmm. He would say something that was outrageous, and the entire media would go to that story, while over here behind the scenes, we have no idea what's going on. There was no reporting on what was happening with the Ivanka and her husband in the White House and what they were doing. There was no reporting on what the family was doing to leverage their position financially or politically in the system. And yet here we have a lot of attention being paid to Hunter Biden. And again, I don't want to get into a huge political conversation, and I'm not saying one's right or wrong over the other, and I'm not making a judgment on the families. However, I am saying we have a lot of reporting going on over one son of a current president. Where was the reporting of the children of the former president? Not from a place of blame, where, of course, we don't want to get into the situation like what happened with Amy Carter, where the media was horrendous and tearing her apart. And thanks to her, she's been a stand to protect presidential children so that they can have privacy and not go through that. But it's curious to me. And I think, again, it was because you have somebody who would say something that was so outrageous that everybody would go over there like, oh my gosh, does he really mean that? And then the stories would drop. And so again, I think we could talk about this for days on end. And I'd like to come back to this idea of independence and independence of thinking. And that for me is the invitation, is independence of thinking. So for me, what I did is I went to the Supreme Court site and I pulled up the actual ruling. It's thick. I'm not going to lie. I'm not through it yet because I really get to read each piece and really understand and contemplate for my own self. What does that section mean? What does that sentence mean? For me, that is my independence of thought, not listening to everybody else and being swayed by what they have to say, but let me read the actual ruling and come to a place of understanding for me so that I can speak from that place. And of course, there are certain posts and memes that I've seen that have really resonated with me. Ariana Huffington, I really enjoy her position and her stand. And one of the most powerful pieces that I've seen in a long time, she posted. And for me, it gave me the words to what I was feeling inside that I could not express. And I'm paraphrasing here because I don't remember exactly, but her post on Instagram was, okay, in the past 2 days, the Supreme Court has said life begins at conception and ends in mass shooting.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that was a powerful statement. Yeah.
Wow. So again, independence, when we're in independent thought, that is our power.
Yeah.
Because what it does is it invites conversation. And when we can be independent in our belief system and open to conversation and set aside heatedness, emotionalism, and stand in our leadership and be empowered in the leadership in our lives and hear what other people have to say and be in a place of like, whew, I don't agree with you right now, or I'm having a hard time hearing this. And that doesn't land for me. That doesn't resonate for how I want to live life. But if we can at least have that conversation, I believe that we'd be in a much different place. And I also see this as an outright energetic attack, a battle of energies on the feminine. There's been a massive surge in light coming into this world and in light energy and people waking up to their gifts. And there's more and more light workers waking up to their ability to be clairvoyant, their ability to be mediums, seeing through the veil to other realms. I don't know about you, Waska, but the more people I talk to, the more people are talking about these things. Like, yeah. I always thought that was like some woo-woo stuff. It is. And we're all woo-woo. And so I see this as that pendulum swing of just, it's going to continue to be uncomfortable until we come back to that center point. And we as light workers get to come together and be in ceremony to energetically cleanse ourselves, heal our wounds, clear our ancestral lineages so that we can be walking in the purest of light with independent thought and having that energy cascade out from us, because that becomes a wave. And that wave becomes an ocean, and that ocean moves around the world and creates the change that we are seeking, that we do want, and holds off, and it will eventually crush this outdated, patriarchal, misogynistic way of thinking.
I'll hold to that. Yeah. Wow. That's some powerful words there, my sister. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you made some really good points. What's resonating for me, everything that you're saying is resonating for me, but specifically the diversionary tactics that have been used to really keep us from being in that place of balance and groundedness to have the conversation, so you mentioned that, there's this shiny object over here, that's very much intentional to bring our attention and intention away from sitting down and working things out like we're supposed to do, right? I mean, this is human beings. We're supposed to like be in tribes, be in communication, be in ceremony, be in communion with each other to raise up all of us, not just some of us, but all of us. And it's unfortunate that that's not happening as much as we'd like to see. Although, as you pointed out, there are a lot of light workers, or I won't even give labels, people waking up to say, hey, this doesn't feel right. There is something else out there. There is something that feels better to me, and let me try that. And it's important for us to sit down and, like, I agree also that we don't have to agree, but we do benefit, all of us, from sitting across from each other, sitting in circle with each other, and hearing and feeling and having empathy for other people's emotions, feelings, experiences, and taking a look like, hey, you know, maybe there is another way, and I don't have to be, you know, so staunch and right about the way I feel about this. These are other sentient human beings that have feelings, and why can't we all just sit around and talk about this and get along and figure it out together, you know? Because, you know, might is right. That patriarchal way has been ruling for a very long time, and it's going to turn. It's just a matter of time. It's going to turn. And those who are not on board with playing nice and having equanimity and sitting and having these conversations will not be in a very good place at that point in time. I mean, that's just a prophecy, and it's just, I believe that's the way it's going to be. So, yeah, I think we could all benefit from that communication and empathy, and just really honoring each other, and as well as ourselves, because it is a dishonor to ourselves the way we're treating each other, with this like, no, you're wrong, I'm right, I have the power, and this is the way it's going to be. So from your mouth to creator's ears, that we can open up and share that space and circle and heal, because we really do need to heal. Because if part of the population, a large part of the population, is hurting, then how could the rest of us really even feel good about thriving or elevating ourselves when the rest of the population doesn't feel that way?
It's all of us or none of us. No one wins unless we all win. That's just the way it is. And I walk a path with the lineage of King Solomon, and as an initiate into King Solomon's teachings. And we're in a time of Shambhala, the rooting of Shambhala here on earth. And what the heck does that mean? What that means is that the prophecy of 1,000 years of peace. Is that going to happen tomorrow? Maybe. Doesn't feel like it. The 1,000 years of peace is a possibility. And all of this energy and all of this aggression, for me, is the death rattle of this old energy trying to hang on and trying to take us out of the game. Because again, coming back to being independent, you know, was I sitting in meditation at my highest self and in walking in light for the last week? Not every moment of every day. And some days, not at all. Because, and I knew that all of the emotions that I have, the fury, the frustration, the anger, I was very conscious how it was taking me out of my game. And so what I got to do was practice shifting into possibility, shifting into opportunity, acknowledging that all of that is there, because I can't ignore it. When we ignore those things, it becomes stuck energy and it creates a whole bevy of problems that we then have to deal with later. And I got to allow myself to be in that space. And I was talking with a dear friend of mine, and she brought up something really interesting. Her name is Amanda Young, and her movement is Urban Goddess. And we were chatting, and she said the message that she wanted to put forth is how we as women have wisdom. We are all wisdom keepers, men and women too, but she's specifically speaking for women. We have this innate wisdom in our womb, in our bodies. And with all of the chemicals and all of the ways that we've embraced managing our biology, we have separated ourselves from our body and from the wisdom of our womb and our own biological rhythms. So this is an invitation to get back into relationship with our biological systems, to bring back and seek out the learning and the wisdom of herbs and natural medicinal pathways, of which there are many people out there who practice this. And if it's something that you've always been called to be in relationship with herbs and natural ways and the rhythm of your body, men and women, now is the time. You must hear it. You must step forward, because it is in that wisdom that we will be able to support each other and move past any type of governmental body telling us what we can and cannot do. The other piece around this, she said this beautiful phrase, again, her name's Amanda Young with Urban Guys, and she said, let's stop asking daddy for permission. And for me in that moment, it was like the mic drop. I was like, thank you. This is exactly, that was supported me in my shift to like, okay, what's possible here? What's possible is reaching out the hand to the people in your community. What's possible to anybody that you know in states that had automatic legislation go through to make abortion and the access to abortion illegal or phenomenally difficult. If you know people in those states, reach out. Let them know you're here to support them. If we've got frequent flyer miles, let's make those available. If you can financially support someone who is in need of a choice, do that. Provide rides, provide housing, provide food, like whatever you can do, and be in action. Find an organization that resonates for you to support or plug into, because we may be, and it's likely that we are moving into an era of, it's not going to be an underground railroad, it's going to be above ground railroad, and we're going to do it fiercely, because it is time to be fierce and to fight. And it is time for us to do it together, shoulder to shoulder, men and women. And men, if you know that you do not want children in this life, get a vasectomy. And in fact, I've read an article that there's a number of men who are stepping forward. There's been a wave of vasectomies over this last week. Like, that is the way that you can stand, because they ain't going to restrict your right to a vasectomy. They just aren't. And what's on the table, and what Clarence Thomas, after the decision came down, was proposing, was taking a look at other legislation like access to birth control. And that certainly is not talking about men's access to birth control. It's about women's access to birth control. So now is the time to be coming together in community and in unity and supporting each other and looking out for one another. And maybe you don't agree with abortion, and that is okay. Do you agree that we all have a sovereign right over our body? And there's also, again, I don't want to be the, brimstone and hellfire. That's not what this is. But there are things we get to watch. We get to watch in the states that we know are who are passing legislation against abortion or to make it difficult. We get to watch them and see if they start bringing criminal charges against women who lose their children during pregnancy.
Yeah.
It's something that I read an article last night on NPR, something between 2006 and 2020, I think was the time period that they've done research, where the charges against women who lost for fetus homicide quadrupled. And that's women who miscarried, who maybe fall and have a miscarriage. There's a variety of things that happen. I'm not fully versed on that, but there's a lot there. And I'm very, very cautious about that. I understand the law's intention, which is to protect the unborn child. And it feeds into all of these other thinkings around who's to blame. And so why are you charging women for a potential miscarriage? You have no idea what a woman goes through in that situation when she loses a child. It's devastating. And then to have to deal with something like that on top, potentially. I'm not saying it's happening everywhere, but we get to watch it.
Yeah, it's got to be extremely traumatic, and no man has any concept, as you're saying. I was with my friend Jen 2 nights ago, and she shared a law that just, I thought she was like kidding about this. I'm like, why would you even, that's not funny. And she's like, no, it's not funny. It's true. Her family's from Tennessee. So in Tennessee, if God forbid a woman gets raped and gets pregnant, okay, and wants to have an abortion, the perpetrator and the family can sue that woman for not carrying to term that baby. I mean, I can't even fathom, like, how could that be a law? How could that be a law? We're talking about rights. I mean, this speaks to what you're talking about here also, that women have really lost the right over their bodies completely when it comes to this situation. And if it was the other way around, that's again, I don't like getting really political, or I like to keep it light and positive, which I appreciate that you're able to definitely to do a lot more than I can. I get angry. I get very, very angry that this is the way it is turning against women. That's the way I feel anyway. This country, okay, we're talking about July 4th, Independence Day. This country was born from the ways of the Iroquois Confederacy, okay? That's how our democracy, our Constitution was fashioned after the ways of the Iroquois Confederacy, the Native Americans, the indigenous First Nations people of this country, okay? It was a council of women. It was matriarchal. It was not patriarchal. It was matriarchal, okay? And I'm not saying they didn't fight and they didn't go to war. They did. But they didn't just go just to flex their muscles and take things and be right. They did it if it was absolutely necessary. If there was a physical threat, a bodily threat, a spiritual threat, then yes, okay, the council would vote on it and that would happen. But it's not. I've often said that if women were making the choice to send their sons and daughters into war, to fight, to kill, to be killed, I really don't think we'd be having as many wars as we do right now. I think it's easier for men to send, especially other people's sons, into war. So anyway, where we come in, hundreds of years, that it was more balanced and there were women's voices being heard and there was a matriarchal component to this country, and things were, you could argue, in a much more balanced way. And we've gotten away from that. And now not only are we not hearing their voices, but we're taking away their rights. And it's just not okay. And to speak to your point, it's not, I'll say bipartisan. We need to really sit down and work this out together. It's just that simple. We're taught that as little kids. Okay, let's sit down, stop the aggression and let's talk this out. Let's make nice with each other. And I mean, it's like we are like little children. Like, let's make nice and figure out how we could all rise up. Like they say, the I don't know the saying, whatever, that low water raises all ships. Like, but yeah. Really, if we're not raising each other up, then what is the point? It's just, there's got to be some equanimity, some balance, and some love and some compassion here. So I'm getting off my soapbox, and I'm really glad that was gonna be my last question. What is not just the empathy? Because I asked another woman friend for her opinion, and I said, and I used like, well, other than being empathetic, and it's great, she said, and she's right, it's great to be empathetic, but it's not enough. There needs to be action, just like you were speaking about. So I appreciate that, and reiterate that, please, for everyone, not just the guys, but everyone. What action do you feel is most important that we could take at this point in time?
Yeah, and nobody wants sympathy.
Yeah, you're right.
And everybody wants empathy, and there's a very big difference between the two. And in being empathetic with another person, that also allows us to be sovereign and independent, because we're not taking on another person's emotion or their situation. So you do what you can right now. And if you don't like any of the suggestions I've made, what's your suggestion? What's your idea? Let's get out there. Let's come together. And like, I'm not going to pretend that I'm not like almost in tears every moment that I think about this, every time I think about this, because I am. And I'm devastated by the lack of unity in this. and I have some personal beliefs too on the conversation and where that sprouted from, which I do believe still sprouts from the seed of spiritual belief, we'll put it that way. I know you can read into that. And when the soul comes in, and that's a whole nother conversation. And right now it's about action. Join a march, host a march, run for office. For goodness sakes, run for office. PTA, dog catcher, sheriff, city council. These are important positions, because yes, at the congressional level, there's a lot happening, but it's our local areas, and every town that we live in is where we're going to affect big change. And we can't forget that in our city council, there's a lot of power there.
Yeah.
And that city council then speaks to the state. So how about getting on that city council? And if that's not your bag, that's okay. Phone banking, donations, either hosting someone, donating frequent flyer miles, donating funds, donating anything that you can, your time. Who you be in this world is important, and how you show up is incredibly important. And I don't have all the resources, and I know that there's a lot out there. Emily's list is a great resource, and I know that there are more and more that are coming up, that are sprouting up. And there have been a number of law firms, especially in states that we know have been waving this flag for a very long time. There's a number of law firms out there that have been in action for years to support women. So if you're a lawyer, donate your time, reach out to those law firms, figure out how to start those services and be of service. And if those are not, or if you're a doctor, here's the thing about this decision. It's not just women, it's doctors.
Yeah. It's
the medical profession, and it's an absolute assault on the medical profession. And when this all started, when the conversation began, medical doctors were coming forward and they're saying, you're tying our hands because we can't even have a conversation with our patients. This is in the 50s. We can't have conversations with our patients to save their lives, to save the life of the woman.
Yeah.
So, how do we support our medical professionals as well? And so keep asking questions, be independent in your thinking, and reach out with your heart, even when you may be as angry, disappointed, and feeling as violated as I do.
Yeah. Well, I love you, my sister, and I want to give you my full heart. And if there's any way I could support other than what I'm currently doing for you personally or for your sisters, let me know, because I do facilitate men's circles and all, and I always bring this in, and I encourage them to watch these conversations and to open their eyes, because we really do need to stand for our wives, our sisters, our mothers, our grandmothers, our aunties, our female friends. I mean, it's a movement that needs to keep moving this way, so we are in equanimity with each other. And that's when I really truly believe we will all be happy, not dominating one another, but being in communion with each other. So I'm grateful for your words. I'm grateful for your presence here. And yeah.
Thank you, Waska. I so appreciate the opportunity to spend time with you, my brother. And your men's groups are the pebble that's creating the huge ripple, creating change in this world. So thank you for being a stand for illumination and offering such an incredible gift and path for our brothers.
I appreciate that. And for all that are listening, I hope they got some jewels of wisdom from this, planted some seeds, and that it's not just rhetoric, that we actually take action and stand for what's going on here as one. So with that, thank you, my friend. And as always, I appreciate your time and your words. So as I usually end the show, I will say, let's continue to illuminate our paths with loving kindness.
Visit IlluminatedWarrior.com if you'd like to go deeper and find out more about what's available within the Illuminated Warrior Men's Transformational community. Tune in next time for more candid conversations for men and women about men on the Way of the Illuminated Warrior Talk Show. Until next time, illuminate your path with loving kindness.